Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm T, and today I'm going to be sharing some of my quarantine recommendations. This isn't going to be like makeup and clothes, it's more like movies, TV shows, books, just things you can do to entertain yourself because most of us are still stuck at home. Unless you're from New Zealand, in which case please leave because you're making me so jealous right now. I've watched so many of these kind of videos during quarantine and I just really enjoyed them. I think it's really interesting to see what kind of content people around me or like people that I follow on social media are consuming. So I guess I'm just going to share some of mine. I'm dividing this video into a couple of categories, and the first thing I'm going to be starting with is movies and TV shows, and I have like a list written on my phone, so if occasionally I'm looking down, that is why. Movies is quite a short category because I definitely watch more TV shows than movies. Whenever I do watch movies, it's actually usually rewatching something I've already seen or just kind of like watching a stupid chick flick. They're usually not as good as the TV shows I watch. Something I recently watched that I really enjoyed is All My Life. It's about a couple who are getting engaged and the man finds out that he has cancer, and it's about them kind of deciding to go ahead with the wedding anyway and deciding to kind of like stick it out and stay together. It's really sad. I honestly cried over it quite a lot. Probably for the last like half hour of the movie I was just straight up sobbing. Sometimes I find it very therapeutic to watch really sad movies, especially in quarantine whenever you're like sad but you don't really have like one specific thing you're sad about. It's nice to have an emotional outlet that kind of like lets you cry without having to think too much about your feelings, and I think sad movies for me always do that really well. The next movie I have is Tenet, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about. It is so amazing. I've always loved movies that kind of like mess with your mind and where you're like, whoa, what the hell is going on for basically the whole movie, and that was definitely me with Tenet. I don't really know how to summarize it without spoiling anything, but basically it's about trying to prevent the end of the world, and there's a lot of time travel in it, and it is really interesting, and I feel like that was a horrible summary. If for nothing else, then you should definitely watch it for the cast, because let me tell you, all the men in this movie are stunning. Moving on to TV shows, which I watch a borderline worrying amount of. Honestly, I should just remove the borderline. It is a worrying amount. I watch so much Netflix, which does mean I have a lot of recommendations. However, I'm going to be making a kind of perfect Netflix show for each zodiac sign video really soon, so I don't want to spoil too many of the TV shows, but I'm still going to give you a couple. The first one I have, and I think this is my favorite TV show of 2020, and I'm sure you've all heard of it, but it is The Queen's Gambit. Whenever I first heard of the plot, I wasn't immediately sold. I didn't think that I would be that interested in a, I don't know, series about chess, but it is so fascinating and mostly it is very empowering. It's about this girl who has, you know, pretty bad life circumstances and struggles with addiction and loneliness throughout her whole life. She struggles also with being the only woman who is playing chess at this level. She struggles with her relationships, she struggles with intimacy, she struggles with kind of growing up by herself. And also, for the lovers of the found family trope, I feel like there definitely is an element of that too. Especially in the last episode, I found it so wholesome and perfectly full circle. I watched it with my flatmate at university, we binge watched it and we were both so in love, so I would so recommend it. The next series recommendation I have is The Politician. There's actually 2 seasons of this, and season 1 I watched back in 2019, quite a while ago. But the first season follows this kid called Peyton, who's very like entitled, kind of rich kid. He's trying to be his class president, and there's a lot of like politics within the school, but there's also like a lot of deeper meaning. There's a bit of a similar like side plot line to that of The Act, where one of the side characters has cancer but she doesn't really have cancer. And the second season actually follows Peyton when he's more grown up and he's running to be the state senator of New York. It is so interesting. It goes into depth about the intricacies of politics, about running a campaign, about deciding what kind of person you want to be, what kind of politician you want to be, and honestly all the characters are amazing, not to mention that Ben Platt is the main character and he sings in it, which is honestly all I think I need to say to sell this show. Next, I've been watching a lot of K-dramas. I don't want to like explain all of them because I know some people just don't like K-dramas, but I think It's Okay Not to Be Okay, which is what I'm currently watching, is one of the most amazing and emotional roller coaster series I've watched in a very long time. It has made me so sad at times. It's surprisingly deep. I'd say both of the characters are pretty damaged, but it basically follows the story between a children's book writer and a psychiatric hospital worker. It touches on really important elements of mental health, trauma, relationships. It's really interesting and also very entertaining. I feel like K-dramas are really good at making you laugh out loud. Crash Landing on You, which is one of the first K-dramas I ever watched, literally made me burst out laughing multiple times in the middle of a plane journey, and everyone around me thought I was super weird, but it's just so funny. And my last series recommendation is The Undoing. I think it came out in 2020, but I'm a little bit behind on the bandwagon, and I actually watched it in 2021 with my mum. It has Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant in it, and it's basically a murder mystery where the husband gets accused of murder and the wife's entire life falls apart, and she has to decide whether she should support him and, you know, believe his innocence, or whether she should condemn him and believe that he actually murdered someone. It's so thrilling, and I know especially in the last episode I was like literally on the edge of my seat. I was so stressed, my heart was beating out of my chest. The next section is books. Whenever I was younger, I was the most avid reader ever. I read so much. Honestly, whenever like school started getting harder with like GCSEs and especially A-levels, and you know, it hasn't really changed with university, I just really stopped reading. But recently I've really been trying to rekindle my love for reading, and there are a couple of amazing things I've read recently that I'd really recommend. So the first one is actually a fantasy book series, and it is the Court of Thorns and Roses book series. See, I feel like most people who have heard of this book series heard of it as like the fairy porn book series, because there are some spicy scenes, but overall I just think it's a really good book. It's really immersive. It kind of really pulls you into this like magical world. It was actually the book that kind of got me back into reading. As I said, I hadn't read in a really long time, and whenever I was younger I did read a lot of fantasy, so I think finding something that pulled me back into my childhood but also in like a more kind of a mature way was really cool. Another book I would really recommend, and this isn't really a recent favorite because I've read it a bunch of times, but I am currently rereading it, and that is Norwegian Wood. It follows this guy who reminisces about his younger years and about his relationship with this girl who he knew when he was younger. I'm really trying to not spoil it, but there's a lot of themes of mental health again, and also just, you know, relationships and love and what loving really means, and what kind of growing up means. I feel like in a sense it is a bit of a coming of age book, but it's not the typical like high school coming of age book. It's more of a real mature like growing up with the world kind of coming of age book. It is quite possibly my favorite book ever, and if I'm ever going to write a book I would love to write something like this one, because it just made me feel so much and it made me think so deeply about the world, and I think that's one of the best characteristics a book can have. Okay, the next book is prime evidence of the fact that I'm super late to the party with reading and watching things, but Normal People. I finally got around to reading it a while ago, and I sped through it so quickly. I was obsessed with it. It is so interestingly written. Whenever I first started it, I wasn't sure if I liked the style, the fact that there weren't any quotation marks, but the more I read it, the more I just really fell in love with the story. I think it's so immersive. Again, it just has really interesting viewpoints on like love and relationships. The next recommendation I have is actually The Book of Everything. I feel like no one's really heard of this book. It's a Dutch book. I actually read it in Hungarian, which for those of you who don't know is my first language. But basically the plot of the book is that it follows this young kid throughout his life and throughout his discoveries and experiences. He lives in an abusive household, so there's a lot about abuse. Basically everything he experiences is just written from such a genuine and wholesome perspective, because obviously we see it through the eyes of a kid. At points it is very heartbreaking, but it is also just very insightful. It's another one of my all-time favorites, which I recently reread. And the last book I'm going to say is actually, well, it's not like a book, like it's not a novel, but it's an ebook called Paradigm Shift. And I don't know if you guys know Wellness by Soap on Instagram, but it's her ebook. She's kind of created this community for it as well. Like, she has an Instagram page called Paradigm Shift, which you can join once you buy the book. It's just a lot of journaling prompts, self-help ideas. Again, it's something I find really inspirational. I've used a lot of her prompts in my own journal. Okay, the next category I want to move on to is podcasts. Podcasts are probably the biggest thing that I've gotten into over quarantine, and one of the first podcasts I started listening to is The High Low. It's by Pandora Sykes and Dolly Alderton. I'm honestly kind of obsessed with them, and I'm obsessed with their dynamic. They're just so funny and interesting together. As the title indicates, The High Low is about like a mix of high and low culture, so they touch on everything from global politics to just celebrity encounters. They actually started it back in 2017, and I only started listening to it in 2020, so I started right at the beginning and I've kind of been catching up, which also means I'm lucky because The High Low is actually now ended, so I still have content while most other people don't, but also it's just quite cool because it's a bit of a throwback listening to like 2017 politics. Like, they were talking about Brexit, for instance, and like the 2017 Oscars, and I was just like, ooh, that's so cool. Like, it's a bit of a trip back in time. Other than that, a bunch of my favorite YouTubers have recently started podcasts. I'll just say 3 of my favorites. The first one is the Lexi podcast by Lexi Lombard, and then there is Growing with the Flow with Naina Florence, and there is Dadapod, which is Moya Mulvaney's podcast with her friend Lauren. And all of them honestly just feel like chatting with one of your friends. They're really candid, they're really interesting, they touch on such a wide array of topics. Whenever I go on walks, they're literally my favorite things to just listen to. It makes you feel like you have some like very wholesome company. And then 2 slightly different podcasts that I have are Today in Focus, which is The Guardian's kind of every weekday podcast, where they kind of just touch on whatever big political or societal issues that are going on currently. I think it's a really good way to just kind of stay updated with politics, especially when the news have been a bit depressing. Sometimes I just don't really feel like turning on the news because it just makes me feel a bit sad, but I also don't want to be out of touch with reality, so I think this is a really good in between. And lastly, and this is the podcast I've actually been listening to for the longest, but it didn't properly get me into other podcasts like The High Low did, but this is Reasons to Be Cheerful with Ed Miliband and Jeff Lloyd, and it is so fascinating. I listened to it whenever I was applying to university and I thought I wanted to study politics, so I kind of wanted to know a lot about politics, and it just talks about so many everyday political issues, again everyday societal issues. I felt like this podcast alone has defined so many of my political views, and it's made me so much more educated about the world around me. I would really recommend listening to it. The next category is creators, and there are so many creators that I have been loving recently. The first of which is Naina Florence, who actually inspired this video because I watched her like my quarantine recommendations video back in quarantine, and then her more recent updated version a couple of days ago. She is just so lovely. She actually goes to the same university I do, and she was one of the people who really made me fall in love with the idea of going to Edinburgh University. All her videos and vlogs just make it look so stunning, which I mean obviously it is, but yeah, she just really encouraged me to go for it and to go somewhere as far as Scotland. The next one is Moya Mulvaney. Now she's actually also one of my like favorite Instagram content creators, not just YouTube. Her Instagram feed is so aesthetic, but also she's just the loveliest human. I just find that I really resonate with her. Like, there's a lot of content creators who I watch as like, oh, I think like we'd get on really well, but I just find that whenever I watch her videos, she'll say stuff and I'll be like, oh my god, like I literally said that exact same thing to one of my friends, or that I think exactly that. So I don't know, I just find that I really resonate with her, and I don't know, I just love watching all her content. And also she is a style queen, and her Dublin diaries make me want to go to Dublin so bad. The next one is Aliyah Zaita. I'm really sorry, I don't know exactly how to pronounce her surname, but she's just so lovely. She actually has a slightly similar, like, I don't know, life story to me. She grew up in Romania until she was 10 and then moved to America, and I grew up in Hungary until I was 10 and then moved to the UK. So, you know, slight similarity, but I just think she's really candid and funny, and she's just a college student who has, you know, all the similar struggles that I do. I really like her content. She's really relatable, and also she's very much relationship goals with her boyfriend. The next person is Jazzy Lee. I've been watching her videos for quite a while now, and I am still in consistent awe of how much effort she must put into editing her videos, because they are genuinely artistic masterpieces, as are her thumbnails. She is just so aesthetic and all her content is just so beautiful. I aspire to create content as beautiful as hers. And the last YouTube creator that I want to talk about is Jenim. She's been on YouTube for a really long time now, and I've been watching her for, I'd say, at least 6 years, like a really very long time. She was one of the first people who really made me think about wanting to start a YouTube channel. I mean, obviously it took me quite a while, but I remember watching her videos back when I was like 14, 15 and thinking, you know, I would love to make something like this. And I still love every single one of her videos. Again, her editing is just so impeccable. Her relationship with her husband is so cute, and all her videos just clearly have so much effort put into them, and they're so inspiring to me. I know a couple of these I've already said that I also follow on Instagram. Honestly, I think I follow all of them on Instagram, but there's 3 other like particular people that I just really love seeing on my Instagram feed. Wellness with Soph, who I've already mentioned because I read her ebook, I follow on Instagram. I love her content. She posts really cool recipes, journal prompts. She's also just very candid about her own like well-being and what she does to like make herself feel as good like mentally, physically and spiritually as possible. I find her really inspiring, especially for like my own kind of spirituality journey. Another Instagram creator is Yi Mags. Her Instagram feed is actually goals. It's so aesthetic and color coordinated and beautiful, not to mention that she has so much sustainability activism on her Instagram. I feel like she's one of the creators that educated me the most about the bad impact of fast fashion, and kind of embracing sustainability and how you can like best do it even on a budget. So yeah, I really love her content. And the last section of this video, and my god, this video is becoming long, is music. So admittedly, approximately 90% of the music I listen to is Taylor Swift, which doesn't leave room for a lot of other recommendations. But you know, if somehow you are living under a rock and you haven't heard of Taylor Swift yet, or you just haven't, I don't know, listened to her recent music, I would really recommend. Just recently she's released 2 whole albums and a re-recording of one of her like old songs, all of which are amazing. I think my favorite songs by her are Nobody No Crime from her most recent album, Betty, which is from Folklore. Honestly, I don't know if I can choose a favorite from all her songs, but I really do love Cornelia Street. I know it is like half sad, but it does just kind of make me think I would love to be in that kind of love. I also listen to quite a lot of K-pop, mostly BTS. My favorite songs are probably Pied Piper for like kind of jamming out in my room, having a dance party, you know, going on a run, something more active. And Your Eyes Tell is one of my other favorite songs that, I don't know, just makes me feel very like peaceful and happy. I also listen to quite a lot of Harry Styles. From the Dining Table, I think would have to be my favorite. That song just makes me feel so much. And last but not least, I know I mentioned the Politician series, which has Ben Platt in it, and Ben Platt actually sings in it, and 3 of the songs he does in it, Vienna, Corner of the Sky and River, are just so insanely beautiful. Especially Vienna is kind of about, I don't know, being too ambitious and like dealing with your ambition and like not burning out, something that I feel like I've experienced quite a lot. It's on my like favorite playlist, which is My Roaring 20s Are Looking Scary. Yeah, I actually listen to a lot of playlists rather than individual artists. The 20s one that I just spoke about, which is kind of about being scared of, but also like embracing the fact that I'm getting older because I'm turning 20 in a month and a bit. There's one called like Bitch I'm a Big Deal, which is just kind of like a self-hype up playlist. There's one that's just This Makes Me Feel So Much, I think, or something like that, which, you know, is pretty self-explanatory, but songs that make me feel a lot. I think making playlists is really fun. If you want to check any of mine out, you can follow me on Spotify. It's just T Tolmar, so the same as here. That's basically all my recommendations. You know, if you guys enjoy these, I might do more monthly kind of recommendations, which is smaller scale, like books that I read recently, clothes I've been loving recently, you know, new content creators I'm discovering, because I feel like I'm discovering new ones literally every single day. But yeah, I really enjoy sharing this kind of stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed it too, and I hope you guys are having a lovely time wherever you are. I'm sending you all my love, and thank you for watching.